guys, so today we're going to be doing an entry-level video editing PC. What I mean by entry-level is it's not the craziest CPU, it's not the craziest graphics cards, it's not overkill on the RAM, etc, etc. It's just the bare minimum to what I personally feel like you need to get into video editing and turn out some really high quality products and not sit around all day waiting for a video to render or, smooth playback while you're scrubbing through your timeline. So let's go ahead and dive right on into it. Alright guys, so let's get this show on the road. First, let's start with the price. It's $428.99 and you can buy it at SuperBiiz.com. The CPU itself is an Intel i7-6800K, which is overclockable. The data width is 64-bit or 64-bit architecture over 32-bit. The socket type is LGA 2011-3. So another thing that I find very interesting is the base frequency of this is 3.4 gigahertz, which where the 6950X, the Big Daddy, is only 3 gigahertz, which is pretty bad. But anyways, moving on. Turbo frequency of a base clock of 3.6 gigahertz, so you get some good performance out of this card. It has 6 cores. Hyper-threading is an affirmative with this card. Great, great, great. Also, there is no integrated graphics. Sorry, guys. Alright, now next on the list, we're going to talk about the CPU cooler. This one comes in at a whopping $19.99, and you can get it on Newegg.com. The manufacturer is RAIJINTEK. Very good brand, in my personal opinion. I've used a couple of their products, and I love them a lot. The model for this one is AIDOS Black. What's kind of funny about that is the only thing that's black on it is really the fan shroud, but hey, whatever, AIDOS. It is not liquid cooled, unfortunately, as you can see. It's a sleeve bearing CPU cooler, so should get some good performance, long longevity out of this CPU cooler. The noise level comes in at 28.9 decibels, so not too loud, but definitely not the quietest CPU cooler that we've seen. The fan RPMs get up to 1,000 all the way up to 2,200 RPM, so pretty high speed fans. Also, something to take into matter when you're putting this in the case is this thing in its complete height is 5.35 inches or 136 millimeters, so be aware of that when you're building in a case. Moving into the heart and soul of the build itself, the motherboard. The price on this thing right here is $183.98, and you can find it on Newegg.com. The motherboard itself is an Asus X99-A USB 3.1 model. Form factor is ATX, so it'll fit in the mid to ATX size tower, or full size ATX. CPU type is LGA 2011-3. Chipset is Intel's X99 series. Now, as far as memory slots go, you have 8 288-pin DIMM slots, so a lot of room for expansion there. Memory types that it supports is DDR4, which is an upgrade from our previous budget build, which is only DDR3, but the frequencies that this RAM can come in that it supports is 2133, 2400, 2666, 2800, 3000, and 3200. So you can get some really high speed RAM in this motherboard. It can hold a maximum memory capacity of 64 gigabytes, so you can go a full 8x8 gigabyte setup if you would like to. It does have support for RAID, so that is another key point here that with video editing, RAID storage or setting up a NAS storage in a RAID configuration could be something that you're interested in. There's no onboard video. Yes, there is crossfire support if you use AMD graphics cards, such as the Radeons. It has support for 3-way SLI. It has one SATA Express connector. The onboard Ethernet is 110 by 100 or up to 1,000 megabytes per second connection. And also it does have onboard USB 3.0 headers. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about something that is a key component to this motherboard, which you need to run the computer in general, and that is the RAM. So the price on this stuff right here is $112.89, and you can find it at OutletPC.com. It's a 208-pin DIMM, which is what our motherboard calls for. The frequency of this RAM is DDR4 at 3000, so it's some very high speed RAM. It's just one bump under the maximum speed that this motherboard can handle. What we're going for in this build is 16 gigabytes, which is a 2x8 gigabyte setup, which leaves you plenty of room to expand all the way to 64 gigabytes. Now, price per gigabyte, we're paying $7.06 per gigabyte with this setup right here. The voltage of the RAM itself is 1.3 volts, so not too bad at all. It comes with heat spreaders built in. There's no ECC, and as you can see, the color is black and silver, so it kind of got a theme going on here with our whole setup, so it's going over pretty good. And if you didn't notice, this is Corsair's Dominator Platinums. Great RAM, looks beautiful, couldn't ask for more. So unlike our budget build, here I don't want to say we didn't spare anything, but we are doing what you need for the bare minimum for video editing, in my personal opinion. So here we got an SSD. The SSD that we have, it's a Kingston SSDNow UV400 series. Price on this sucker is $63.88, and you can find this at OutletPC as well. The maximum capacity for this here SSD is 240 gigabytes, which is what I chose to go with. We could have gone smaller, save a little bit more money, but I decided that we might, have a high capacity workflow, so 240 gigabytes is plenty. So you can also have your operating system, some games, your video editing software on there as well, alongside the files that you're importing. The interface is SATA 6 gigabytes per second. It's a 2.5-inch form factor, which is pretty standard for SSDs. And once again, we're going to talk about how many gigs you're getting for your price point. So for every dollar with this setup here, for every dollar you are getting 3.76 gigabytes. So that is actually very good. And the price per gigabyte that we're paying for is only 27 cents, so total steal. Now another thing along with storage is we need mass storage. So just kind of as an entry level, we have this right here. The price on it is $69. You can find it at B&H. It's a Western Digital Black Series, my personal favorite for hard drives, overall mechanical hard drives, 7200 RPMs, it's a banger. I myself, I use 5 gigabyte models of this, but hey, you gotta start somewhere. 1 terabyte. So as we said, capacity is 1 terabyte. The interface, it's a SATA 6 interface, so that's good. It has a cache of 64 megabytes, so great for your buffering. RPM 7200, as I stated before. Now the form factor, 3.5 inches, which just like SSDs, this is basically the baseline dimensions for your mechanical drives. Now back to gigabytes for every dollar. You're getting 14.49 gigabytes per dollar, which is basically double what we got for our SSD. Now price per gigabyte, we're not even paying 7 cents, close to 7 cents, it's 0.069. So we'll round it up to 7 cents. Now for one of my favorite pieces in this build. You can get this right here for $249 even at B&H. It's MSI GeForce GTX 1060 graphics card. If you look at it black and white, and I'm just going to call it silver just to make myself happy, it matches the whole build. So all in all, we got a good aesthetic going on with this build. The interface PCI Express by 16, so that's great. Memory size on this graphics card is 6 gigabytes. Memory type is GDDR5. The core clock speed on this is 1.5 gigahertz, and I've seen this exact card boosted up to almost 1.7, so it's a very solid card. The total draw for the power on this graphics card is 120 watts, so it's very low demanding. It has 2 fan shrouds, as you can see. SLI support is a negative on this one, which is unfortunate, but hey, it is what it is. Now the total length on this graphics card, because like I said earlier with the CPU cooler, you always want to keep in mind the dimensions of the parts that you're putting in to make sure that they can fit inside the case that you're using for your build. Now the total length of this is 9.72 inches, so basically 9.75 of an inch, or 247 millimeters. It does support G-Sync. It has 1 DVI dual link input, 3 DisplayPort inputs, and 1 HDMI input. So overall, an outstanding graphics card. Now what we have here is the case. It's only $49.99 at B&H, which is a total steal. The case itself is made by Corsair, and it's a 100R. Beautiful, beautiful case. Looks very similar to the fractal design case that we used in our budget build just the other day. Now the type of case, it's ATX mid-size tower case, so it can support an ATX motherboard and all the way down to mini ATX, ITX, etc. The color, as you can see, is black. It comes in several variations in colors, but I chose the black one for this build. It does not include a power supply, so we're going to have to get our own. It has 2 external 5.25 inch dry bays, and it has 4 internal 3.25 inch dry bays, which you can also put your SSDs inside those 3.25 dry bays. Like I said earlier, the motherboard compatibility is ATX, micro ATX, and mini ITX. So unfortunately, you cannot fit an extended ATX motherboard inside this case. The front panel includes USB 3.0 ports, which is great because we have USB 3.0 headers on our motherboard. Now, as I was saying earlier, something that you want to keep in mind, maximum video card length. This case right here, with the cases in, can take up to 10.83 inches or 275 millimeters. So even with the drive cages in it, the video card that we're using will fit in there just fine. Matter of fact, it'll have a little bit over an inch left to spare. And if you take out the drive cages, you can use some of the bigger video cards, such as the 1080 classified, which is very large in size, width and length overall. But you can have a maximum of 16.3 inches or 414 millimeters without the drive cages installed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, well, certainly not least, because without this, the computer won't turn on. So for $59.99 at Newegg.com, you can get this Rosewill 550 watt power supply. It's an ATX 12 volt power supply, which is pretty standard nowadays. I believe it's EPS 12 volt as well. Total watts, 550 watts. It has one fan included at the top, as you can see here in the picture. And something that I think is astounding, it is fully modular. I don't know if you guys care about fully modular, but to me, it's just something that I like. I always look for fully modular power supplies regardless, just because I like the way they look. And I like to use custom sleeved cables, and if I don't have a modular power supply, that's kind of pointless because I'm way too lazy to sleeve my own cables. It's up to a 92% efficiency, and it has an efficiency certification of 80 plus gold, which you can actually see in the picture there as well. And then if you're worried about your PCI Express 6+2 pin connectors, it comes with 2 of them, so nothing spared there. Great power supply. All right, so there you have it. That, like I said, is our entry-level PC for video editing. It came in right, I mean, when I say right, just over $1,200. I believe it to be $1,237 to be exact. Other than that, I hope the video was helpful. If you have any questions or comments or even any tips on what we could have done to make the build better, please do so. Also, as usual, or as always, I'll leave the full PC parts picker list in the description with the prices and where you can find them as well. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.